Hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here.
Bonjour tout le monde, je m'appelle Stéphanie Nadeau, commissaire à la médiation culturelle à la Galerie d'art d'Ottawa. Je vais juste vous laisser savoir que la présentation se passera en anglais, mais si à la fin vous avez des questions à poser en français, je peux toujours faciliter la traduction pour Eliza. So I wanted to start by respectfully and gratefully acknowledging our presence on unceded Algonquin territory. And thank you all for being here for the talk with Eliza Chandler. I also wanted to thank Canada Scene for collaborating with us on this, and also the Canada Council for the Arts, the Ontario Arts Council, and the City of Ottawa. So Seriously Creative is a talk series at the Ottawa Art Gallery where we present artists, curators, entrepreneurs, people who are leveraging the arts in service of social change and transformation. So I have the great pleasure of introducing you to Eliza Chandler. And I'm just going to read you the bio that was, if it will open. Sorry. This is not a very pleasant introduction. Sorry, Eliza. Okay. Eliza Chandler is assistant professor at the School of Disability Studies at Ryerson University. She is the co-director of a Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council funded partnership project, Bodies in Translation, Activist Art, Technology, and Access to Life, a project that interrogates the connections between art and the achievement of social justice. Chandler is a practicing curator, and prior to her current roles, she was the artistic director of Tangled Art Plus Disability and the founding director of Tangled Art Gallery. Please join me in welcoming Eliza Chandler.
Hi. Can everyone hear me when I hold the mic like this?
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Stephanie, for that. Really nice introduction. So I want to begin again by acknowledging that we are here on traditional unceded territories of the Algonquin Nation. And I want to thank Stephanie Nadeau for this seriously creative invitation, and Carolyn for all of her organizational work. Thank you, Carolyn. And Kara Scott for arranging this as a collaboration between the Ottawa Gallery and Canada Scene. And thanks to everyone behind the scenes who have been making this work. I also want to thank Carmen Papella for allowing us to be in the space that he's created and amongst the artwork, and for the beautiful performance last night and the intervention the day before. So I hope that we can all take note of this amazing exhibition after the talk. I'll begin by saying that the work I'm sharing here today is really an expression of collective knowledge. The ideas have been born and borrowed from many conversations that I have been fortunate enough to be a part of over the last few years. It would be too lengthy to list all of the names, so I'll just mention a few here who I've been working closely with. And again, what I'm talking about today is really a generation of that knowledge. So Lindsay Fisher, who's here today, Kara Scott, and Katie McMillan, Baraka de Soleil, and I also want to acknowledge the formative culture building efforts of folks like Kazumi Takasura, Michelle DeConnie, Rachel Gorman, Alex Ballmer, and Leah Lakshmi, to name a few. And I'm also going to be bringing in a disability justice framework into this talk, and this is a framework I'll explain it in more depth. But I want to acknowledge that it was created by and it centers the experience of Black, Indigenous, people of color, queer folks, sick folks, chronically ill folks, and spoony folks. I'm a white settler, and so I'm very much borrowing from this framework, which I think is the only way to go about things in this disability culture and our colonial culture on this north part of Turtle Island. both cultures of which have systematically decentered the voices of BIPOC folks and the worldviews, Indigenous worldviews. So I acknowledge that I am here taking up space, and I want to thank these disability justice leaders for their work. On the screen right now is an artwork by DJ Palestine, and the work is a drawing, and there's a blue background and a white floor. And we see a black woman in what we can understand perhaps as a prison uniform and an orange jumpsuit, seated in a wheelchair, extending an arm to a woman sitting on the floor with bandages around perhaps amputated arms and legs, wearing a hijab. And the text reads, "Disability justice," so this is my framework, "disability justice means resisting together from solitary cells to open air prisons. To exist is to resist." Okay. As for access, I'll be visually describing all of the images as I've just done, and I'll be showing one short video that is captioned, and I will audio describe it. I'll give trigger and content warnings as I go, and I ask that others do the same, but I also recognize that what I recognize or feel as a trigger or not may not be everyone's experience. So a few things that could be triggering for some of you is I'll talk about colonialism, institutionalization, but not in any depth. And the video I show does sort of deal with explicit ableism, and I'll make mention of that again. So those are sort of the themes that perhaps are triggering. So how are the lights in the space? Can people see the slides and the ASL interpretation? Is that all good?
Yes.
And you can hear me well, and you're seated well, people are comfortable. So it's relaxed, so feel free to get up and move around or, whatever. Take a break. Any other access needs? Okay, that was a long preamble, but here we go. Okay, so deaf and disability arts. I think it's important to frame deaf and disability arts is really, really old. Likely people have been making what we could consider deaf and disability art since time immemorial, and even pre-colonial contact versions of disability arts were likely being created. Since colonization and the indigenous genocide that it created, disability arts has been continued to be created in work camps, residential schools, and asylums, prisons, and other institutional and carceral quarters, as well as in, everyday cultures. So here on the screen is an image by artist Maurice Lark, and it's called "Growing Homes." It's a felted image of a flower pot on a blue background, and out of the flower pot there's some sprouts, and on the top of the sprouts there are homes. Maurice Lark is an artist in Toronto who spent a large part of her life in the Huronia Residential Center, HRC, and this was an institution, an asylum. And Marie is a disabled woman who learned how to knit on bobby pins that you would find in the hallway and create knitting, and often would get in trouble and get punished for making art. But so Marie is an example of someone who's been making art as a disabled person since the 1950s perhaps, and sort of recognize that. Another sort of formative artist you may have heard of, Judith Scott. Her work has been taken up a lot lately. and it should come to Canada. So I think Power Plant might be hosting an exhibition. Anyway, the curators are in the room. It's major work. So on the screen is, you can't tell the scale, but it's sort of tire shaped, like a tractor tire shape. And it's sort of wrapped white and black and a little bit of red thread, and it's just like a wrapped circular shape. And like Marie Judith Scott was raised in an asylum. She's an artist with Down syndrome. Never, as far as we can tell, never went to an art gallery likely because she was imprisoned in the asylum and learned to make her work in the asylum. And after her death, her sister discovered all of these wrappings that she made, again, sort of like Marie, out of things that she would find on the floors and things like that, and has begun to sort of market her sister, Judith Scott, as an artist. And the show was at the Oakville Art Gallery in the winter. So, hi Tracy. Feel free to, as people come in the room, we can sort of, make room for folks and make sure seatings are, there's a couch up here as well. Priscilla Blackbridge is an artist who many of you may know. I think her work is being hosted by the Canada Council, if I have that right at some point. So this is work. Priscilla has been describing herself as a disability artist since the 1970s, as a mad artist, a mad woman, a lesbian. On the screen, these are pretty powerful works, I think. Are three figures that sort of loosely, or maybe not so loosely, reference the human body. They're made out of different colors of wood. One is made of mahogany wood, I think, and it's a figure with a sliced off head at the top, a big slice down the body, joined by 4 metal brackets, I guess. One of the arms is a wing, and one of the legs is a bone. And there are some other sculptures on the screen as well that look sort of similar. Because of the formative and relentless efforts of folks like Michel de Cotigny and Jeff Mercury, who have canvassed the arts funders to recognize the professionalism of disability arts, professionalism that is inextricably linked to community and a political base. We are currently experiencing a long-awaited moment wherein funders like the Canada Council for the Arts, the Ontario Arts Council, other arts funders, have begun to recognize the richness and the vibrancy of deaf and disability arts. And I give thanks to aforementioned leaders as well as the arts councils. And because of this much needed influx in funding, disability arts is being taken up a lot, and as it should be. But what I'm going to make an argument for here today is that it can't be taken up without taking up and embracing a disability politic. And I recognize that we're all, coming at this from a different place. So a disability politic might be new to us. How to make our shows accessible might be new to us, but there are leaders, and that's why I'm sort of taking the time to mention names here today, so that we get a sense of the robustness of folks who can help us out with getting to know disability politics, accessible curatorial practices, which are models here in the gallery today, and I'll outline more explicitly. But this is my main sort of point of the talk, is you can't have disability arts without our politics. And you can't have disability art without recognizing disabled people, and especially BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, as leaders, leaders in the field who should be reached out to. So, if we're curating disability art, we should be attentive to the history and the nuances of Crip aesthetics, and we see Crip aesthetics on the screen as well as in the art gallery. And throughout it all, we must ensure that we are not simply sliding disability arts and culture into a normative idea of culture, but instead opening up how we experience culture, cripping the arts as we do. So what is deaf disability in mod art? And we've seen images. And this is on the screen. Kazumi Takasura, who's been again doing what he calls a CP salon since about the 1960s. He's a musician. So on the screen is Kazumi, an Asian male with pretty identifiable cerebral palsy, and he's singing. His face is in sort of a joyful sort of singing expression. I would say he's wearing a red shirt, and behind him, sort of blurred in the background, is someone playing the stand-up bass, I think. So there are important cultural distinctions between deaf, disability, and mod art, and that's why the councils have so wisely, I think, separated out deaf and disability arts. So I'll go over that. So on the screen now is an image. Oh, it's really blurry, but it's from a performance from a deaf arts collective in Gatineau. Spill propagation, and Peter Owesu is on the screen now. So Peter is a Black deaf man standing on a theater stage. Around him, there's circles drawn on the floor and people sitting around him. So deaf arts, it comes from deaf culture, and it comes from this idea that deaf folks are, lots of deaf folks, not all, but folks who identify as culturally deaf identify as being part of a linguistic minority. So not disabled at all, simply speaking, reading, conversing in a visual language, as we see here today, rather than an oral language. So deaf culture does things thinks about how to decenter auditory experiences in art, right? So because deaf folks don't identify as disabled, but a linguistic minority, again, I'm speaking sort of broadly, culturally, it's important to take these things as separate things. Disability art and disability culture, which I identify as a part, lots of us, not all of us, but lots of us sort of proudly identify as disabled. So if you were to say to me, that was a great talk, and by the end of it I forgot that you were disabled, I wouldn't believe you. And I personally wouldn't take it as a compliment, because my disability, like my everything else, really informs how I experience the world and how I make art and how I experience art. We have other language, and I've mentioned some of them. Crips, Spoonies, we talked about that yesterday. Folks who identify as having a chronic illness, who might be low in spoons or low in capacity. Carmen identifies in such a beautiful way as a non-visual learner. I love that, and we're coming up with new language all of the time. Mod art is sort of the last thing I'll go through. Mod art comes from my culture again. My culture is made up of folks who identify as, well, lots of things. Experiencing mental illness, experiencing madness, or simply experiencing interactions with the psychiatric system. So some folks just identify with the experience of psychiatric intervention, willfully or not, and not necessarily as mad or mentally ill at all. This on the screen is Gloria Swan's work, and she produces this major exhibition called Mad Room. And you see pink and green sort of, how would you say, maybe sort of spray painted background, and in the foreground you just see a black figure of a black woman herself. And in Gloria's show, Mad Room, she really talked about how her experience as a black woman was an experience of madness, that her madness was not produced by misfiring chemicals, and therefore couldn't be cured or managed by medication or, isolation. For her, the experience of being a black woman, a black mother, fearing that her black sons and daughters might get wrongfully incarcerated or victims of police brutality, things like ongoing settler colonialism and anti-black racism, these were the things that were causing her distress and causing her madness. And so to cure or to sort of abate that madness meant that we had to, as a culture, address anti-black racism and address police brutality and things like that. So it's a radically different way of thinking about madness, both what causes it and what cures it. And I personally learned a lot from Gloria's work because we say, and I'm sure Alan Shane will agree with me, we say a lot, and I believe it, that disability art is not art therapy. It's distinctly different. And when we think about disability art as art therapy, we're remembering legacies of institutionalization and real entrenched ableism, which thought that anytime a disabled person made work, it was considered to be outside of intention or talent or skill building or a political motivation. Lots of times our work was stolen from institutions, displayed in art galleries, and because it was considered art therapy until some curator like John Buffet discovered it, the artists' names were not included in the galleries. The artists weren't invited to give artist talks, and if the art was sold, of course the artist didn't see any money, and things like art classes and things weren't given out. So it's really important to separate art, disability art from art therapy. It's really important. Gloria said, my work is therapeutic, and I said, no, it's not. And and at the end of it, she said, it is. My madness is political, my art is political, and it's also therapeutic. So there are nuances. I mean, we certainly didn't treat it. We treated it as professional art, and of course invited her in. I think she was there every day giving talks, but did not deny that for some, therapy can be art can be a political tool and still be a therapeutic one. Okay, so just a few more, just because I'm presenting to an audience of presenters, so pitching some work. Vanessa Dion Fletcher is an Indigenous disabled artist, and this is a still from a show called On Your Cervix, which was mounted at the Tangled Art Gallery. The walls are painted period red, menstrual blood red. Actually, she took a swap of her menstrual blood to Home Depot and got it color. Which is great. And she had the audio recording of that interaction as a piece of the work. And this piece that we're looking at is called Colonial Comfort. So talking about disrupting this idea of colonial comfort. So we see sort of a Victorian chaise lounge it's a white chaise lounge with maybe mahogany. I say everything's mahogany. Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I would. But, it's a recognizable Victorian piece of furniture, and she's amplified some of the decor with her period blood, and she's also sort of embellished it with porcupine quills, right? So she's using a significant part of her Lenape indigenous culture, porcupine quills, to puncture or disrupt the comfort that myself and other white settlers expect to experience. So, this is not a tactile piece of work. And behind the furniture are white circles, sort of on, what do they call them? They like an embroidery ring, I guess? Yeah, hoop, thank you. And she's, again, sort of used her practice of beading to embroider blood splotches. But Vanessa talks a lot, and I don't have time to get into it today, about showing this work in other galleries and really having it misread as sort of a second wave feminist, show about period blood, and it really wasn't. It really was about how colonization has taken hold of how we understand our bodies, and she would give out cervical self-examination sessions for anyone with a cervix who wanted it. So, and she talks about the way that it was framed in the Tangled Art Gallery with all of the tactile and audio description features as making it understandable as a distinctly decolonizing effort, in ways that it was not read outside of the context of disability art and outside of the context of an accessible art gallery, which made me so happy to hear that, to hear that connection. Melanie Montesoro's work, which is, I think, it was on display at the Tangled Art Gallery, and I think it's still on display at the Thunder Bay Art Gallery. Here on the screen are very blurry images of some beautiful work of tactile work, of textile work, which is also tactile. The more tactile work by Melanie, weaving on a hand loom. For Arc de Soleil, here he is, a black man walking with arm crutches, carrying his laundry in an IKEA bag on his back. This was a performance about his daily experience with inaccessibility. Lynn St. Marie is a Toronto-based Crip black artist, and they really talk about things like Facebook memes and Facebook entries as being a new way that Crips and Spoonies can participate in making and curating and exhibiting art on Facebook, which of course is not accessible to all, but perhaps more accessible to some than a gallery might be. And of course, you can self-curate. So this is work by Lynx on a red background, featuring different images of Lynx, right way up and upside down. Lynx is a black genderqueer Crip with sort of a hairdo dreads on the top of their head and shaved sides, wearing a black shirt. Cyrus Marcus were produced portraits of activists and black activists and disability leaders. This is a drawing. I think this work was actually curated by Lindsay Fisher and Vanessa Fletcher it was from the series at the Robert McLaughlin Gallery in Ottawa. It's a drawing of a black woman sort of in joyous laughter with dreadlocks and her hands sort of raised in a joyful expression. Very new work by Cyrus Marcus, brand new. These are the signs that Black Lives Matter were holding at the Pride demonstration over the weekend. It's a black background and it says, "May we never again need to remind you of our humanity, Black Lives Matter." And then underneath some birds, sort of some circled birds in different textile patterns. So here obviously an example of how throughout it all we can see that, and throughout the show, Carmen's show, we can see that disability arts really is many things. It can animate the physical or emotional or spiritual experience, sensorial experience of disability. It can animate crip or deaf or mad culture, but it also can reach across other identity movements, and I think it's really important for us to recognize this work as distinctly disability-led as well. Dolly Manning and a Dubai artist. Here's some work of hers, which was in the Western University Art Gallery. A projection of a colonial. I can't really tell what the projection is. People standing in front of a mountain. There's some red sculptures with cowboy hats, and one of the sculptures are made of crutches. Okay, so that's just a taste of work. And finally, Justin Many Fingers, older and reckless. This was a performance that the NAC put on. Justin is an Indigenous man standing on tippy toes, wearing knee pads and briefs, and his hands are stretched. As you can see that he does have many fingers. Okay. So, what is CRIP? So CRIP is a word that is used in the disability community a lot. Folks reclaim this word, much like the queer communities have reclaimed words, like queer. So CRIP is obviously derives from crippled, but has now been reclaimed and is used a lot in our community. On the screen is a definition that I love by a disability scholar, Kelly Fritsch, who uses CRIP as a verb. And CRIP, as she says, to CRIP is to open up with desire for the ways that disability disrupts. So I want us to hang on to this for a little bit. And I'll leave it on the screen for a little bit. To open up with desire for the ways that disability disrupts requires us to think about the inclusion of disabled, deaf, and mad people as disruptive, unquestionably. So if you've always held your dance lessons in an inaccessible venue, it can be disruptive to your budget, to your programming, to your promotion, to change venues. If you've never had an ASL interpreter at your theater program, it can be disruptive to not only hire ASL interpreters, but also hire what are called deaf interpreters to work alongside with hearing interpreters, interpreting into their own language. It can be disruptive to the rehearsal schedule, to your budget, and it can even be disruptive to the aesthetics of the stage. Including disabled people is disruptive, and I think when we forget that or we ignore that, then we only include disabled people who can easily slide into normative culture, so can perform quickly and professionally and meet deadlines, who speak in an understandable voice, maybe not with the aid of an interpretation or something like that. who don't require things like attending care, who don't require things like a quiet room. It's disruptive, and your audience might notice, your budget will certainly notice, and your cultural practices will notice. So we need to think about that disruption. And I would argue that there's a few ways that we can orient to that disruption. As things like the AODA and the Federal Accessibility Act, what did they call it? I forget. But the Federal Accessibility Act become enacted, hopefully in the next few years, we will no longer have a choice. We'll have to be inclusive. We'll have to include disabled people. So not tolerating the disruption will no longer be an option. But we can tolerate the disruption. We can do the bare minimum. We can sort of invite people in when they're not too disruptive, when they don't disrupt their budget, all of these things. But we can also open up with desire for the ways that disability disrupts. And recognize that arts and culture and theater can be exclusive for many people for many reasons. When I teach this in classes, I ask people, and I can ask you, to think about the first time that you ever were in an art gallery. Was it when you were 5 or was it when you were 35? And think about all of the ways that art galleries, theater, all of these cultural practices have historically been exclusive to folks of working class, to single mothers, to disabled folks, to folks in institutions, all of these things. So I'm sort of arguing that when we center disability and center that as an intersectional experience, that also invites us to decolonize art galleries, to center different kind of bodies as creators, curators, and audience members, then what we're actually doing is we're making a better culture for everyone. I say that with one big caveat, that even if an accommodation for a disabled person doesn't make things better for everyone, we still have to do it, right? So we can't trick ourselves into thinking, we'll put up a ramp because then mothers with strollers or fathers or parents with strollers will come in. We do need to center disabled people and take direction from disabled people, the disabled people we encounter, and think about creating inclusive practices as an ongoing project that's never finished, always evolving, I'd say, each time that we encounter a disabled person. Maybe I'll just skip a little bit. I'm just skipping a little bit over a pretty important part of it, called disability justice. And disability justice, on the slide here it says, it's a great quote by Leah Lakshmi Sena, and she writes, "Disability justice centers sick and disabled people of color, queer and trans disabled folks of color, and everyone who is marginalized in mainstream disability organizing. More than that, it asserts that ableism helps to make racism, Christian supremacy, sexism, and queer and transphobia possible, and that all of those systems of oppression are locked up tight." So, and Mia Mingus, another disability justice activist, writes something. She writes something that I don't have on the screen, which is to say that we need to think about access with an understanding and moving away from an equality-based model of sameness. This model of we are just like you. We need to move to a model of disability justice that embraces difference confronts privilege and challenges what is considered normal on every front. We don't simply want to join the ranks of the privileged. We want to dismantle those ranks and the systems that maintain them. So that links very closely with what Rich is telling us about desiring the disruption that disability makes. We don't want to simply fold into your theater program or your gallery program. We want to disrupt it and the systems of oppression that maintain it. Okay, I'm going to move along. I want to show a video. So we've seen some art, we've talked about some politics, and now I want to show a video. And what am I going to do to it? So it's captioned, and I think that I can actually audio describe it beforehand without spoil alert. So what we'll see, what we'll see is a disability artist named Eliza Chandler, and she's performing in a Boise Artist in Residence, and it's written on the screen, in a first Thursday performance event. So in this residence, all artists are given access to a window gallery, so a street-facing gallery. Eliza Chandler has has, as you'll hear described in the video, has no arms below the elbows and no legs, and has created for herself prosthetics that sort of resemble table legs, and she's dancing in this video held up on these prostheses. She's asked her friend and collaborator Jason to go outside of the gallery and document the work for documentation purposes. But what he captures on this video is two or three women strolling by, looking into the gallery, looking and seeing Lisa perform this sort of magical dance, and then comment on it. So the reason that I want to show this work is to amplify something that was said yesterday. That maybe I'll talk about that after the video. But I want us to think about the reaction that these women have, not to judge these women, but to think about the cultural approaches that are the kinds of ways that ableism affects how disability art is read or understood, and how as curators and presenters, I would say we have a responsibility to work in ways that mitigate that, acknowledging that disabled people are always facing these kinds of oppression because disabled artists need to make their work, and when we don't mitigate these kinds of things for disabled artists, then they're doing the labor of mitigating themselves. That's all I'll say, but let's just watch the video. It's just it's 1 minute and 54 seconds.
Check the website. I don't have any. I don't have any for. It's Lisa Chandler.
Is that a person? Yeah. It's a she.
I'm an artist too. So,
Oh, someone's trying to film her.
Oh,
sorry.
no, you're part of the art.
You're fine.
What? She not tell us about her.
She's a disabled dancer, performance artist. She's in the artist in residency program. She has a studio on the second floor. The first Thursday they open up the space for their little friends to do it.
But is she handicapped?
Well, sort of-
I'm at.
She has no leg below the knee and no fingers.
Okay. Mentally fine though.
Yes.
born that way? Accident? I can relate, I almost did that there.
Did she come up with the idea?
Yeah.
I'm going to stand up here.
Be afraid of
Okay, so there was a lot happening in the video and the audio wasn't great, so I'll repeat some of the key audio bits. So the first thing that was happening in the video is we saw some pretty incredible artwork that was professional, that was rooted in a practice, that was skilled and thoughtful and provocative. We also heard some reaction. So at the beginning, they were looking at her, and then they asked Jason, well, tell us about her. He told them what they needed to know, that she was an artist, a dancer, and was performing as part of her Thursdays in this gallery. And those, that didn't satiate their inquisitiveness, so they asked, is she handicapped? He sort of hesitated and answered a little bit about her impairment, saying she has no legs below the knees and no fingers. And then they said born that way, and then he paused, accident, he answered no to born that way, and then didn't answer to accident, the question accident, and then one of the questions was, is she a she? And then the final question, which sort of gets me the most, is, did she come up with that herself? So again, and they just say, oh, we must sound awful, and yes, you do, but that's not the point of the video, and the point is not obviously to shame anyone. But here's the point that I think, that in the midst of creating this beautiful work, her humanity is questioned, her gender is questioned, her impairment is sort of questioned. They want to know more about her impairment than the work. And then when they finally get around to asking or noticing about the work, I mean, that's sort of this most troubling question was, did she come up with that herself? Well, yes, she did. Of course she did. I mean, I couldn't have curated or choreographed that. I mean, to me, as a disabled person, a disabled artist, I can see a Crip aesthetic in that work that was born out of an experience of living with a disability. Of course, she created that herself. So our artistic intention and our capacity to create is being questioned even at the very moment that our art is being witnessed. So what do we do about all this? Because people need to paint their art. People don't need to deal with this ableist shit. And then the question, mentally fine though, right? Like, where's the solidarity? Like, there was some satisfaction in, you could sort of sense the relief when the answer was, oh yeah, she is. So where's the solidarity between folks with madness or intellectual impairments, anything like this, to sort of use that as a relief valve for appreciating the work. So maybe I'm gonna skip over. Where are we for time? Oh, we're okay. I won't skip it over yet. Okay, so we as presenters have tremendous responsibility. We obviously can't just program disability art because it's in the latest Canada Council strategic plan, which should be, and we're glad that it is. But it's not just about collaborating for the sake of it. We need to center these politics. We need to recognize that this kind of stuff is happening all the time. And in the midst, or because of, or in spite of, or some combination of it all, we make this incredible work. So I'm sure we're all sort of on board with it needs to be shown. So what can we do? Maybe I'll just take this gallery as an example. We can make things barrier-free, which means that we make sure the gallery has a barrier-free entrance, make sure installations are easily wheelchair accessible. People can wheel over. I do have some images as well. Back to the slideshow. Sorry, I'm just fiddling. So I think the AGO has a pretty great example of how when we make galleries barrier-free, it certainly doesn't distract from the aesthetic of the facade. So here on the screen, it's a beautiful, again with the wood, it's all wood-based. What?
Mahogany.
Beautiful mahogany. Circular ramp that everyone can use to get into the art gallery. Obviously, we don't all have the ATO budget, but I think we can use it as sort of an indication that we can make things accessible as we need to, in a way that's invitational as well. This is some of Steve Keen's work called Spina Bifida Back to French. In the gallery you'll see, and in this gallery you'll see duplicated, that it's photographs that hung at an accessible level that prioritizes wheelchair users' sight lines. So this is an example of disruption. People can come into your gallery and they'll know, like people who can see, can notice that Carmen's work is displayed at a different level than we might typically see in a gallery. We're prioritizing a different kind of viewer, and that's disruptive. And we want you to notice that. We don't want you to sort of pretend you don't, because it's our way of centering a non-normative gallery goer and making the whole experience of being in a gallery invitational, so that when we roll or walk into a gallery and we see the ramp, we see that the work is hung at a lower level, we notice it's an audio description, we sense that it's a relaxed environment. We have ASL interpreters at the talks without having to pre-arrange it. When we have straws, which are really important access features, on the bar at the opening to drink our wine or whatever through a straw, these are things that are more than just best practices. They really indicate to disabled people that our presence was anticipated and desired. And that's a distinctly different feeling than feeling tolerated or feeling outright excluded. And these things take time, and we talked yesterday about how these practices need to be paired with promotion, and to think about promoting access to a disabled audience who might be unfamiliar with some of the things you're introducing. So I know in the UK, audio description has been around for a whole long time, but in Canada, it hasn't. So I said to a friend, I'll come to this play, it's audio described, and she was like, what? But like, we need, if no one's ever heard of that, if a blind person has never even thought to check out a theater program because it's never been accessible, we need to foreground that in how we promote our shows. And we might even need to explain what that is for folks who may never have encountered it before. So these, again, are responsibilities of us as presenters. Obviously, caption videos, tactile work. Again, I'm just sorry, remembering if you're working. Here's a show that Tango produced on the Mighty Rhino, a great disability musician, and we have a deaf interpreter beside the Mighty Rhino. So Sage Willow is a deaf person who translated all of his English lyrics into ASL, and then worked from an ASL script to perform the show. So this allows us to not only hire deaf people, but to experience a better quality of interpretation because Sage is interpreting in their first language. And tactile work is another thing that's pretty disruptive. The work in this gallery is tactile as well. And this is an image of Sean Lee, who works at Tangled, touching a sculpture for Simon Blackbridge, much like the sculptures I described before. And this, I've told the story many times, but I'll tell it again because I think it's so great. We opened Tangled Art Gallery with Persimmon's show, so that was a really strong way to start. And we said to Persimmon, can people touch your work? Because we want the work to be tactilely accessible. And she said, well, no, because the work is very delicate and it could easily be broken. And that's totally fine. Of course, that's fine. Access features shouldn't get in the way of the creative development or the artistic process. So we said, well, how can we make it accessible? Apart from audio description, which we had. So I said to her, maybe we could do a 3D model print out of your work in plastic or silicone so that people can touch it. And she said, no, let me think about it and let me try to create an accessible work, tactile work. So this is what you're seeing on the screen. And what she did was she made a replica, she made an artwork that you could touch so it wasn't delicate. But more than that, when she was making the work, she was guided by her sense of touch rather than her sense of vision, sight. So instead of judging whether the work was balanced or complete or provocative or whatever, she would touch it to feel if it felt balanced or felt like it was representing what she wanted it to represent. And so the proper way to engage with this work is through touch. So the requirement to make the work accessible, produce more artwork. Like, isn't that the best? Like, now we're actually encouraging people to make more artwork. So this demand for accessibility really can be issued as a creative invitation. Melanie Montesoro's work, again, very tactile, so we see on the screen excessively hung tactile weavings and sculptures. Something that we learned from Melanie actually was the importance of live streaming events. So folks, for so many reasons, disabled SPOONY Crip folks might not be able to physically get to the gallery. So live streaming your events can be a way to open that access up to allow folks to attend who may not have been able to. And then, my last sort of thing, well, I have a few more things, but my last sort of thing, two last things. One is to work with a consultant. So if I think the audio description tour is great, who cares, right? So you need to work and pay with a user of audio description who will tell you if it's sufficient and if not, how to make it so hire a consultant. And finally, I guess back to the Lisa Bofano video, there's things that we can do that again might be disruptive to mitigate the ways, the ableism the artist might encounter. So the exhibition statement might actually be a little bit more didactic than we're used to writing. So it might actually explain what disability art is. You might throw in a definition of ableism, and that's pretty didactic. And I know, like, you know, when I was at art school, we were trained not to make didactic work and not to frame the work in a didactic way for the audience. But we might need to sort of mitigate how people read the work so that people are no longer asking, did she make that herself? Did she come up with that idea herself? And my really last point, because I think it is very important, is, this is sort of a heavy way to end, but as I mentioned earlier, I think disability is a colonial term. So even though disability and impairment and injury have been produced by colonial encounters and are continuing to be produced through ongoing legacies of colonization, so people are disabled by war, incarceration, disabled by things like environmental racism. There's all kinds of ways that racism and colonization can disable us. But the term disability is, I would say, a colonial word for a couple of reasons. I thank two elders one elder and one Indigenous folk we work with on the Bodies in Translation grant, Mona Stonefish and Sky Stonefish, who really explained to us when we invited them onto a disability arts project that the word disability wasn't invitational to them because it wasn't a language that they used in their culture. So Sky is someone who I might identify as having CP like me, but Sky isn't identified as disabled in her community, her family. She's identified as a knowledge keeper. So if I want BIPOC folk to present disability art, I might need to shift my language. It might not work to issue a call for disabled folks of color. Aside from it not being culturally competent, I mean, I'm a white woman who can stand up here with a mic and say I'm a proud disabled woman. And me saying that doesn't risk me losing my work permit. It doesn't risk my immigration status. It doesn't risk, there's not a whole lot of risks. So somebody else who might be disabled in a different kind of way, or even the same way, might not have access to the language of disability because of the other precarities they experience. So all of this to say, I think we really need to be open with our language and to be building relationships with people and communities who we want to curate their work. Mona also said to me that she doesn't know an Indigenous person who doesn't have an experience of trauma, right? But if I march in there and say, who's not identified here, it might not work, right? So it's about building those relationships and even framing the show perhaps a little bit differently. So I think I'll end there. I think I was just going to reiterate more. Oh, no. Okay, I want to leave you with two ideas. One is that we can't simply include disabled, deaf, and mute people in the arts without changing our practices. And I think I've sort of said that over and over again. So, we can't make our theater, make our gallery accessible and not program disabled artists and think that we've done it. we can't program disabled artists and not incorporate accessibility practices and think that we've done it. Maybe let's never think that we've done it. Maybe let's always imagine that to be a moving target. And my second point was offered to me by Gloria Swan. And Crip Interiors, a work curated by Lindsay Fisher. A great example of how an installation was made so that wheelchair users could easily get through. Also a great example of big didactic panels that were written in plain language so that folks felt like they might be able to access these didactic panels more readily. And then Gloria Swan, who I mentioned before, she was giving an artist talk, and she was sort of talking about her experience as a mad black artist, and how she didn't get a lot of exhibition opportunities. And somebody said to her, what can we do to support you? And she said, it's so simple, but she said, look around the cultural spaces that you find yourselves in and see, are there disabled people here? Are there disabled people of color here? Do disabled people work in arts council offices? Do disabled people work as curators? Are we sort of populating all of the levels of culture? And if the answer is no, then invite us in. Invite us in even if you might not recognize our qualifications. Invite us in even if we have to be trained on the job, because a lot of us have experienced unequal access to education and internships and things like that. As artistic director of Tangled, I was very much trained on the job because my lived experience was prioritized. So invite us in if you don't see us in places that we need to be. And I'll end with this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. And I wondered if anyone would like to ask a question. I will try to get the microphone free from the tank room. Is that, oh gosh. Well, maybe it'll be a situation where people have to come up. Are there any questions for Eliza? Are you comfortable coming up here or?
I'm going to continue to contextualize all my questions as coming from a place of ignorance. But if an organization was to commission you to curate, does the offer come in as simply, hello, we would like you to curate an exhibition, point, period? Or do we would like you to curate an exhibition on disability and deaf arts? Or is there a difference? And why I ask is I know there's a politicalness to what you do, but is it the choice of being able to curate an exhibition carte blanche, or is it specific to who you are and how you identify?
Very good. Thank you for the question. It's a great question, and I think it's I can only answer for myself. I think, as I said before, disability is something that I'm like disability arts and culture and disability studies is not something I'm inclined to shy away from. So I think really this rhetoric of disability as, see the person, not the disability, is pretty, I would say, damaging, because it's all together. And the only way that makes sense is to understand disability as a deficit, right? If we don't see the person and not the talent, right? So to understand that lots of us are really excited about our disabilities and our communities. So that's one thing. And the second part of your question, do I curate disability arts or do I just curate arts? I think at this moment I curate disability arts because I really want to sort of push this agenda of cripping the arts and disrupting. And a big part of disrupting and making sure that our disruptions have impact is to name what we're doing. To name what we're doing as disability arts. And of course, I complicated myself there at the end by saying it might be a colonial project. If we, if you look at disability arts in the past, historically, it's been a lot of white folks. And so to disrupt that, we might start to use different language. Of course, not all impaired folks identify as disabled. But I would sort of proudly advertise something as disability-led. So if the play was written and directed by a disabled person, with their permission, I would amplify that. But the other thing is, and I meant to say this earlier, we would have to have a conversation, you and I, right? And you might ask me about the language that I like to use, and I would tell you. You might ask me about who I want the work promoted to, and I would tell you who I want the work to be picked up by in the media, and maybe my publications are different than where you would like the work to be advertised, and you might have to capitulate to me, or not, or I might have to capitulate to you, who knows. But, we would have to build that relationship. I think it wouldn't work if you just sort of called me in. You would have to know my work pace. And things like that would have to be built into the contract that we sign. So I don't think that it makes any sense to avoid these issues. If I personally were to curate a work for you, I would proudly call it disability artwork.
I'll also preface that I'm coming from a place of ignorance, but desire to learn. So in some of the work I've done in EDI, in workshops and training in the last couple of years, and something that specifically resonated with my work with Michelle Decocte's, in examining my own sense, my own privilege, and what will never change. I am white, I am male, but one thing that resonated with me in that work was that I'm currently able-bodied, and that may be something that will change over the course of my life. It's potential, I don't know. Do you think there's any value or empowerment in framing a conversation for my audience in my venue, in reminding them that they are currently able-bodied and that might change over the course of their life? Or does that diminish the disabled artist's experience?
It's another really good question. Thank you. It's a really great question. And again, I can only speak for myself. Does it diminish the disabled person's experience? It's a good question. Anyone else want to answer? If anyone honestly has feedback, that's great. For me, again,
I'm just thinking it's kind of like saying, well, you have money now, but one day you'll be on the street. You might be the one on the street.
I think that it thanks for that. I think that it helps us understand that we can't break down accessibility into sort of a cost-benefit analysis. It's really expensive, right? Like it's going to disrupt your budget. So I think arguments like that, like, well, if you live long enough, if you're lucky enough, you become disabled, and if we institutionalize these practices, I mean, a colleague, Anne McGuire, writes a lot about the aging population, and I think the aging population benefits so much from an informative disability rights movement, right? That's why when people become disabled later in life, they have things like accessible transit and stuff like that because of the efforts of disabled people. But again, I would really, even though they're entangled, to think about when we're addressing issues of access, which we must, and I think that kind of argument can help us address that. We're not really addressing the necessity to program disability work, right? We need to build an inclusive culture so that we can keep experiencing culture no matter how we identify or how we experience the work. But we also need to be furthering the cultural conversation about what crip aesthetics are and to to change that cultural landscape, which might not resonate with that argument as clearly, but it's a great thing to bring up. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I have a question. I'll go for a question.
We always have to use the mic, yes.
Okay. I'm coming more from an art educator point of view, and I've taught for about 30 years, and of course in that 30 years I've had disabled or students in my class. And I just wondered, from your experience, how would you help teachers? I mean, in one way you want to ignore, not necessarily ignore, but not bring up like what happened to you or why are you like this. You want to create an accepting environment for the student. On the other hand, as you said, it disrupts. It takes longer. In most cases, I'm working in an area where I'm not marking the children, but I just thought, you've been to art school. What are your concerns or suggestions about that?
Thanks for the question. I'm going to answer it in my own way.
Okay.
When I went to art school, I wasn't out as disabled. I've always been disabled. People know I'm disabled. It's not a secret. But it's nothing that I've ever talked about. I never talked about when I was at NASCAD, which is a major school. It's not accessible at all. So there's no coincidence that I was one of a few physically disabled people. And because I wasn't out as disabled, I didn't have the language or even the frame or even the idea that receiving help to make the work that I needed to make was a requirement, was my right as a student. And that affected the work that I made. So instead of my art being led by my imagination or my creative ideations, it sort of started there, and then I would always bring it back to what I could handle physically. And of course, collaboration happens all the time in art school, right? It's sort of a point of, at least, and I was a sculpture student in NASCAD, and I was surrounded by all these men making these big macho works of art, and it was a point of pride to need help to carry this thing because it was too heavy. But when I would go in and ask for, and I would need to weld something, I couldn't weld it myself. I'd blow up my face in the school. So I would sort of have to trick everyone into thinking nothing was happening. So I would slide in and I would say, I'm just going to weld this thing and hope someone would jump in and help me. But that was limiting my artistic capacity, right? So then, years later, when I came into the fold and I met Lindsay Fisher, who started Project Creative Users, we worked together on Crip Interiors. And I saw all these disabled people around me sharing their ideas with Lindsay, who was curating the show. And they said, well, I want to do this, but I can't do that, so I'm going to do this instead. And what Lindsay said was, oh no, we can make that happen. We can find someone who can help us do that. I can help you make that. And so then again, they were allowed to be led by their creativity. But what was so great about it was that the work didn't then necessarily become collaboration. I think collaboration is great, but not when it's your only option, right? Not when me asking for help then means that it's being driven by who's helping me or understood as a collaboration. So working with Lindsay for the first time, I could make whatever I wanted to make and be led by my imagination, not my ability. And that work was understood myself. And this is actually something that I learned from Alan Shane when I was giving a talk a few years ago. I think Crip aesthetics is, again, when we, my understanding of Crip aesthetics is that when we notice, when we notice how disability affects the art practice, and instead of noting that as a mistake or tolerating it as like she did the best she could, we actually understand that it's integral to our aesthetic experience of the work. That's one thing, and I was sort of saying this, and Alan said, yeah, it's wonderful, but what if you actually don't want, I was using the example, if I'm building a video, and because of my hands, I can't get the audio track and the visual track to sync up perfectly. And if you notice that, and it's not a flaw in the video, but something integral to its aesthetics, then you're desiring my disabled body to make that work. And you're helping frame what we might consider to be Crip aesthetics. And then Alan so smartly said to me, well, what if we don't want that disruption? And I really thought about that question for a long time, because that's not equal access, right? If I'm only given access to this disruptive way of working, which is fantastic and delightful and amazing, but if that's my only option. So I would say to your kids in the class is to let them be led by their imagination. And yeah, I don't think it's relevant what impairment someone has or what happened to someone. It hardly ever factors into creative conversation. So to give examples of disability arts and culture so that people know it's out there as an option, right? But also to support people in whatever ways they need to be supported.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks for the question.
So it's 12:30. People might need to get to the rest of their day, but maybe we can end it there. And if folks have questions, they can come up to you and chat. And thank you all so much for coming. And thank you, Eliza. Yeah, thank you.